Chances are, you probably noticed the housing market has sort of been all over the place lately. Prices started to come down, interest rates started going up, and of course, for a lot of people, I guess that kind of created a bit of a perfect storm. But I'm not sure that we were all ready to see the rental market go as crazy as it apparently has been going. We saw numbers come out earlier this week suggesting that for the first time ever in Canadian history, the average price of rent, monthly rent, has now hit $2,000, actually just over $2,000. So I guess part of the question is, in and of itself, that's scary. But wait, we're not done yet, right? Because if interest rates keep going up, does that necessarily mean rent will keep going up as well? So let's find out. Ben Myers is president of Bullpen Research and Consulting, and on the line right now. Ben, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Let me begin by asking you that question. I kind of painted this scenario of we're not apparently done with interest rates rising. Some suggestions that they might even go from 3.25 to 3.75 before very much longer. So what does that tend to mean for rents?
Yeah, it's interesting. We saw rents go up coming out of the pandemic, and this interest rate hikes have really just thrown gas on the fire. It has, taken some would-be renters out of the potential ownership market because they can't afford it, and others are just seeing resale prices decline and just don't want to get involved quite yet until they see some stabilization in the ownership market. So they're staying in the rental market. So we're seeing supply go down in the rental market, and we're seeing demand go up, not only from these would-be buyers in the market, but from immigration and people moving back into downtowns that maybe had moved out before, or cohorts of graduates that had stayed living with mom and dad during the pandemic, but are now branching out in their first in-office jobs.
You know, Montreal's been traditionally known as a place to find good low-rent apartments, but I'll tell you, they are harder and harder to find, far and few between. But what I want to know is, do you think this is a temporary trend? Do you think there's any hope that it will get back under control, or is this just our new reality?
Well, I think there will be some, arbitrage that eventually happens in the market. I think we're in a position where, because ownership pricing has been going down and there really doesn't seem to be any, idea of when that's going to stop, I think people that would like to be in the ownership market are going to take a little bit of time to see before they see some stabilization there. So prices will eventually come down to the point where it makes sense for someone to leave the rental market and get into the ownership market. But we continue to get, record levels of demand despite the interest rate hikes. The job numbers still seem to be fairly good. So as long as the job numbers are good, as long as the population is growing, and as long as supply is under what we need it to be, where it seems to be in most places, really other than Quebec, we'll see rents continue to increase.
So you brought up Quebec. Let's talk about Quebec specifically. What are you seeing here?
Yeah, so rents went up about 5% year over year, which is, really the lowest among the major provinces in Canada. Quebec has always been a province that has delivered a lot of new supply in terms of rental and condominium apartments, delivering, I think, this year almost as many brand new apartments as Ontario, with a significantly larger population. So that has always kept the supply a little bit more abundant, and people can find a place. So there's not as much competition among landlords as there is in Ontario and certainly in BC.
I brought up interest rates. I'm curious of one thing, and this is the hard part, I guess, to figure out. So the interest rates go up. People who thought they could afford a home now find out, with the mortgage payments being what they're going to be, I can't afford a home. Those people end up either staying where they are or, as you suggested, looking for a place to rent, and then find out that the rent increase maybe offsets what they would have paid in an extra mortgage. I'm kind of wondering when that sort of begins to shift. So it's not sort of equal. I mean, if you're going to rent, you might as well buy. Are we ever going to get to that point?
I think so. I mean, I think at some point in time, inflation's going to get under control. Interest rates are going to go back down, and people are going to get into the ownership market. I think there still is a preference among people to own as opposed to rent. Maybe not in Quebec, which seems to have a slightly different perspective on owning versus renting versus the rest of the country for whatever reason. But I think that will eventually start to happen. But that might not happen till 2024 or 2025. Looking at some of the economists' forecasts out there, so it still may be a while while where we see rents go up pretty rapidly.
Ben, I'm looking at the numbers for like London, Ontario, the steepest increase, so 38.8% for a one-bedroom apartment. Clearly, the pay is not going up. Salaries are not going up at the same rate that the rents are going up. I struggle to know how people can cope. And is the real story here basically that there's not enough rental controls in place?
Well, I mean, in many of these places, there is rent control. So the rentals.ca database of information is based off of vacant or soon-to-be vacant units, and there's no vacancy decontrol. So once a tenant leaves, then the landlord can typically set the rent at any rate that they want to. So in many of these markets, in Ontario, a London's, the Kitchener-Waterloo, the Kingston, Ontarios, the Brantford, Ontarios. We're seeing a lot of GTA expats leave, keep their Toronto jobs and their higher salaries, and then are now willing to pay rents that are lower than Toronto, but certainly way higher than some of those secondary markets have ever seen. So it's really driving the rents up in those marketplaces. So we'll be interesting to see if those smaller municipalities can start ramping up the supply to meet this demand that really has kind of come out of nowhere because these developers didn't expect so many people to be working from home and able to leave a job in Toronto or Vancouver and live in some of these smaller municipalities.
Isn't that fascinating, though? You think about it, during the time the pandemic was on, we saw people leaving the city, couldn't get out of here fast enough to go move outside the city to the burbs. And now, with things changing, people wanting to move back and not being able to find rental units because they're not ready to commit to buying again, right? And those prices have started coming down.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and some people are still scared because of the pandemic, so they are having smaller. They would have taken a roommate, and we would have stuffed more people into a smaller unit, and now people are willing to pay a little bit more to live by themselves. So the household sizes are shrinking as well. So that's impacting the rental market. So all these factors kind of all coming to a head at the same time.
We've heard in the past where the governments have been asked to get involved in the housing situation, right? Because they were so unattainable when prices kept going up.
Foreign buyers.
Yeah, and have you heard anything about the rental market and people saying the government should push back in some way if there's anything they could do?
Yeah, I mean, people always say that there should be rent control, but unfortunately, you're really just trying to strangle the market into cooperating and just having landlords subsidize the tenants. But you really need to increase the supply. I mean, your province has it best. You need to increase the supply. You need to build a lot of towers, and you got to make sure that there's enough housing for the population growth and the latent population growth. All those adults living with mom and dad, and all the people that are going to be graduating and wanting to find a place. I think that's the only way to really satisfy the market. And I do think there's definitely a place for the government to be building a lot of social housing and affordable housing as well. And I think the money that they end up spending on that type of housing is, pays itself back in the fact that we have less homeless, we have less people stressed out, we have less people sick, so they're not spending money on hospitalizations and unemployment and all the things that come with people overpaying for housing or having inadequate housing.
It's funny, I'm finding that interesting what you said about building more towers, and I thought the condo thing was part of the problem in reality. I thought that we were talking, there's so many places available that are higher end that's actually making, or for Airbnbs, that there's less availability of affordable apartments, and those prices are being driven up, if you follow me with what I'm saying.
That's actually really an interesting point, right? In Montreal, we know, for example, a lot of the downtown core of the city is being built up by condo units, and they're more expensive than what you might pay somewhere else. Are we still seeing, to Natasha's point, an issue with Airbnb where so many of these units are sitting empty because they make more money renting them out that way than monthly?
Well, that is a problem, but the way that you deal with that is just building enough so there's enough units that you have Airbnb and to satisfy ownership demand. So the way that it typically works is people who have a lot of money are going to be able to buy something, and they're going to want something that's new. So you want to have those new units for them to move into, so they're not living in the less affordable unit. So every time someone moves up into a more expensive unit, then they open up a less affordable unit. So it's what we call filtering or a vacancy chain. So you have to keep adding new units so that it opens up more affordable units. I like to say if you want to own a more affordable used car that's 5 years old, well, there has to be expensive new cars being built today for you to be able to afford a used car in 5 years from now. So we have to keep building these new units so that 10, 15, 25 years from now, those are the affordable units in the marketplace.
It's a problem I don't think that is going to have a solution anytime soon. I mean, typically, I guess, Ben, even in the rental market, for rents go up, yeah, we get it. Everything else is going up, inflation and interest rates, et cetera. I'm just wondering, historically, when do rents go down? Does that typically happen?
Well, we had unprecedented rent declines during a pandemic, so rents have typically been fairly sticky. We haven't typically seen the type of declines that we saw during the pandemic, but yeah, I mean, I think I don't think we're going to see any major declines in rents moving forward. I just don't think there's anything, any catalyst that's going to interrupt that. We continue, like I mentioned, we continue to get a lot of people coming into the country. We're getting a lot of people graduating from university and starting their new jobs, and the employment market still seems to be doing fairly well in this country, despite some of the political pundits' commentary on it. But so yeah, I think there's still going to be a lot of demand for housing, and people are living longer. I know that's one thing that I haven't discussed yet is the fact that the baby boomers are taking up a lot of housing, and they're living longer. So we need to add new housing to accommodate for other demographic factors as well.
Ben, I want to thank you so much. Appreciate the time and the insight today. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
You bet. Ben Myers from Bullpen Research and Consulting, and that's something he brought up right at the end. We've not even thought of that, right? Yeah, baby boomers living longer, staying longer. Fascinating stuff. And yeah, I can't imagine next time we'll be talking about this and rents will be going down.
No.